Michelle Marie McGrath.
Welcome to today's episode of Unclassified Woman. This is Michelle Marie McGrath, your host, and today I'm talking to Jules Galloway in Australia. Jules is a passionate naturopath, speaker, podcaster, and recipe creator. Health wasn't always Jules's priority. After a challenging youth, she lived a party lifestyle for over a decade. When it began to take its toll on her mind and body, she ditched the busy inner city life for a fresh start in the Byron Bay hinterland. Diagnosed with Pyrrole disorder, adrenal fatigue, and a gene mutation, Jules learned the importance of nourishing herself using whole foods, supplements, happiness, gratitude, and a good sense of humour. With more than 10 years of clinical experience, Jules has made it her mission to help women find their shine again. She's guided hundreds of women through her e-courses and is the host of the inspiring podcast, Shiny Healthy You. Jules loves surfing, hanging out with her husband and their elderly rescue dogs, or walking the famous Byron Bay lighthouse track. She's also recently returned from Greece, where she worked as a volunteer in a refugee camp. This was something that she felt very drawn to, since being a childfree entrepreneur meant she could easily give up her time and energy. And you can find out more about Jules at julesgalloway.com. And I really hope you enjoy today's conversation. Great to have you here today. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks so much for having me, Michelle. I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, so am I. One of my favourite topics. So, just to start us off, Jules, could you share a little bit with us about your background and whether you've not had a child due to a personal choice or whether it's been more of a combination of circumstances?
It's been a little bit of both, actually. So I've been with my husband. We've been married 16 years and we've been together 18 years, and I'm 40 years old now. And when we got married, we were very, very young. And of course, at that point in time, we were like, we're not having them for a while. It was just not on our radar at all. And we didn't own a home. We were renting in Melbourne. We were still kind of establishing ourselves in the world. We were still partying a lot. And we thought, we're not in a position where we want, children right now, or could really support children properly right now. So we just put it on the back burner, like most people do when they're that age, or when they're young and they've got other things they want to be doing. So I put myself through college. I studied 4 years full time. I became a naturopath, and I thought at around that point where I graduated, I think I was around about 30, and at that point, we thought, we should probably start trying for kids at about that time, because, you're 30.
That's just what you do. Yeah.
That's just what you do. And so, like, as soon as I graduated, I thought, we should try. And so we tried for about 6 months, and we had a knock on our door one day, and it was our landlord, and he was a really lovely bloke. We were renting, but we were in a very long-term rental. We'd been in the same home for a good few years, and we had the best landlord. Like, he used to give us gifts, and we had each other's phone numbers, and it was, a great situation. And then he knocked on the door one day and said, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to sell this place in about 6 months. I just thought I'd give you as much notice as possible rather than give you the standard 28 days.
Yeah.
He's like, you've got 6 months up your sleeve. You don't have to leave until then. It's all good. But and we were like, oh, thank you so much for all that notice. But as I shut the door on him, I just thought, what if next time we're renting and someone knocks on our door and gives us notice and they only give us 28 days and I'm 8 months pregnant, or I've got a 1-month-old baby, and all that stuff went through my head. So we'd been trying for 6 months with no luck, and I just went, let's call off the trying and let's buy a house first. So it took us, maybe 6 months to save up for a deposit. And so we had all of those wheels in motion, and then we bought this house. And I just thought, after we buy the house, we'll settle down and start trying again. And And then we kind of got really busy with our careers, and I also got diagnosed with endometriosis in the middle of all of that, which is an inflammatory condition that makes it really hard to get pregnant and to stay pregnant. So it's got a very high rate of miscarriages, and it's very hard to, for some women to even fall pregnant. So at that point, I was, early 30s, and I had a doctor right in my face after I'd been diagnosed. This was in like the follow-up appointment after the operation, because they put you under, they put cameras in there. They do this thing called a laparoscopy.
Yeah.
They have a look around. They clean it up, right? They clean off any adhesions that they find, sew you back up. It's only keyhole surgery, but they sew you back up. Then they go, all right, this is what we've done. And she said, we've removed these adhesions. We've cleaned it all up. And she said, are you married? And I said, yes. And she said, are you hoping to have children one day? And I said, I don't know. I guess. And she said, she got really close to my face, like maybe a foot away from my face. And she looked me square in the eyes and she said, don't leave it too late. And I was like, oh my God, what's going on?
Yeah.
So then I had this fear of God put in me, like someone put a bomb under me. And I was like, Jesus, I need to make a decision.
Yeah.
Like, am I supposed to make a decision right now? And I thought, as much as we, said we wanted to have a baby back then and we were trying, I also, I was in the process of establishing myself as a naturopath and building my name and, getting a bit of a career happening. And I thought, this isn't really a good time. Like, we just moved into our first home that we'd bought together. We were in a bit of debt because we'd done all that saving for the deposit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know. I just don't feel like it's the right time. Like, but this doctor's like, whoa, you got to do it now kind of thing. And so anyway, we put it off for a few years because we just felt like it wasn't the right time for us. And then my health actually started to deteriorate. And we later found out that I had a bunch of health issues going on, not just the endometriosis, but I had adrenal fatigue. I have now been diagnosed with Pyrrole disorder, which is like a blood condition that can cause fatigue and hormonal imbalances and could possibly be the thing that was driving the endometriosis in the first place. We'll never know, but it definitely could be a contributing factor.
Yeah.
I've also got I found out I've got a gene mutation that also contributes to things like fatigue. And basically in Melbourne, we'd been working and playing very hard, and I completely hit the wall and burned out, like really burned out to the point of, nearly having chronic fatigue. And and my mental health wasn't that great. Like, I was suffering a lot from anxiety and depression. And I thought, I don't want to bring a baby into the world right now. I can't mentally cope. Like,
No.
I'm barely looking after myself. So we put it off a bit longer. And then we moved to Byron Bay, and we thought, we'll move somewhere quiet. We'll start again. We'll have a quieter life. It's, I'll sort out my health issues and, live in the sun and play in the surf, and it'll all be really healing and lovely. And we'll have babies. So up we came to Byron. Up we came to Byron Bay, and we settled in a little town that's about sort of less than 15-minute drive from Byron. We're just in the hills behind Byron itself. And we bought this really cute little 3-bedroom house that had it's only a little house, but it's got one sort of normal size bedroom for grown-ups at the front, and then it's got these 2 really cute tiny little bedrooms down the back that were clearly set up when we did the open for inspection. For the people who had it before us must have had like a little girl and a little boy. Both look like rooms that belong to kids under 6 years old.
Yeah.
And I thought, this joint's perfect. The back door leads out onto a deck, onto a flat yard, and no one around here's got a flat yard. Like, that stuff's rare. And we're like, oh, this is the perfect yard. Like, I can, do the dishes and see the kids playing outside.
Yep.
This will be great.
The roses around the door.
Yeah, this will be lovely. This is perfect. So bought the house, moved in, tried again, started trying, but I was never 100% on board.
Yeah.
Like, I was always like,
You felt a bit ambivalent.
I just thought, because that doctor had said that I had to do it like soon because I can't leave it late, until it's too late. And I just thought I'm going to regret not having them if I don't have them, because that's what pretty much everyone had told
That's
me.
what everyone says, don't they?
Yeah, so we started trying again and didn't happen. And, it could be due to the endo, it could be due to something else. But at that point, after about 6 months of trying in our new house, I started coming to that realization where I was either going to have to go down that medical route of, let's go get some tests done. Let's get the blood test. Let's see what day I'm ovulating. Let's look at exactly which day is the best day to conceive. And let's look at, our chances of conceiving, and let's all go off and get the medical tests and have this baby, or maybe not.
Yeah. Yes.
And at that point, I actually was faced with that, that weighing up how badly do I really want to get pregnant, and what will I do to have that baby? Like, what hoops am I prepared to jump through to get pregnant? And I just thought, I don't really want to do that.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting, isn't it, when you question your motivations for that?
Yeah, it's quite intense, because you have to sit down and really unravel, do I think this way because of how my friends and family have influenced me, or do I think this way because it's my thought, or is it society's thoughts that are getting in my head? Like, I know in Melbourne, my closest friends down there, both, my two closest friends at that time, both had babies within their first child within maybe 6 or 9 months of about a year of each other. And so there was that real tribal urge of, if my two closest mates are doing it, now is the best time, because then all our babies, we can all hang out together, and they'll be like cousins, and they'll all grow up together. And I've got this support because I've got these wonderful women who've blazed the trail for me, and they're in it right now, and we can really sit around and talk about all that together. And there's that real pull at that time. But then when we moved up here, it's funny because the people I was attracting as friends, because we didn't really know anyone up here when we moved. I think we knew about 2 or 3 people. That was it. And so I was making new friends, and the new friends I made, of course, didn't have kids because the people I had in Melbourne who were my friends had been my friends for 20 years. We'd seen each other through everything. And then we all started, popping out the babies. Whereas up here, the activities that I was doing where I would meet new people, like surfing or whatever, they're not going to be people with little tiny kids.
Yeah.
So I was attracting all these friends that either didn't have babies and didn't want them for a while, or I had a few new friends who had kids, but they were out the other end, like their kids were like 16, 17 years old and could look after themselves. And then suddenly the urge started to wane a little bit.
It's really fascinating, and you raise a really important point about how when we're faced with this decision about, obviously for loads of women, it's not even a decision. They're just really clear that that's what they want. But when you do feel ambivalent and you're really aware of all this other pressure and these beliefs because of how we're conditioned, it's so important to take the time to unravel, and think, is this really what I want, or is it just what everyone else wants for me? And that's what brings in a lot of confusion for people, because then, of course, we're taught to believe that's what we should want. That's how we're conditioned in our society. It's the natural, in inverted commas, order of procedure. So did you feel aware of any pressure from your family at all?
Well, I actually don't have much family on my side, so I'm pretty lucky on that front in terms of this situation. Some people would think I was terribly unlucky because I don't have much family on my side, but long story short, because it is a long story, but long story short, I was not treated very well. I was actually abused when I was growing up, and I left home at 16 and I did not look back, and I actually don't speak to those people now. So the parents that raised me are well and truly out of the picture, and I have one cousin that I'm very close with who's male and older than me, and I have a couple of other cousins that I'm kind of in contact with via Facebook, but that's it. That's actually it. So there was no pressure on my side. apart from like a couple of little comments here and there from my cousin, who would have loved me to have had a kid, because he would have been like, he was going to, that child would never have wanted for anything, because my cousin, he treats me like a sister, and he would have spoilt that little person rotten. But there was also no pressure, because that cousin also liked going skiing with me and doing all those, activities you can't necessarily do when you've got a toddler. So he was happy either way. On my husband's side, we did have a little bit of pressure from one person in particular, which was my husband's mum, who would dearly, dearly, dearly love a grandchild. And because we've been married for such a long time, she's had several years to just gently put those screws in a very loving way, not in a really intense pressure way, but just like a bit of a comment here and there. Yeah, and I don't want you to wait too long because I'll be too old. But, right now, if you had them, then you could totally go straight back to work and you could leave them with me. You'd never have to take them to childcare. They could be with me every day and I would just love it. And if you had a girl, that would be even better.
No pressure.
Yeah, no. If it's good, if we have a boy, what are we going to do, Mum? But she had 2 boys, so she was pretty keen for me to pop out a little girl, and she's like, she already had like the dance school picked out that the poor kid was going to have to go and do ballet at. So, and I was like, look, steady on, just and at first, because we'd been together such a long time, and I was in my early 20s when I met my husband. At first, there was no pressure, because she's like, oh, you need to get your career sorted first. But then the screws were gently applied, and then after about 10 years of putting those screws in, then she eased off, and I said, one day I said, you don't mention the when are you going to give me a grandchild conversation much anymore? And she said, I've given up. So I was like, awesome.
Oh, so
I'm not buying into that conversation. We'll just leave it there.
Yeah, what can you do? I mean, you can't live your life for your parents, but I mean, people do feel that pressure. It can be very tricky, can't it?
It can, and we were really her only hope for grandkids as well, because like I said, it's a very small family. So if we didn't pop them out, she wasn't going to get any. So it was like, it comes down to me and I'm not having them, and sorry.
Yeah, it can be tricky navigating those conversations. So, I mean, you sound pretty clear, Jules. So, have you ever experienced any type of grief about letting go of the idea of it at all? Or has that not really arisen for you?
Look, I guess I've had that happen to me a couple of times in moments where I've been feeling sorry for myself in other areas of life. So it would only really hit me if I really had something else going on at the time that I was, unhappy about. And like I said, I've had some health issues and whatnot. So, very occasionally I'll sit down feeling a bit sorry for myself. But that kind of, it's not, I guess you would call it grief, but it comes and goes pretty quickly. And I always try and refocus myself by looking at all the things that I can do that I wouldn't necessarily be able to do if I got pregnant tomorrow. So I definitely try and focus on the positives and all the things that can be done. And I've made sure that I've kept myself nice and busy. Like, as you know, I'm an entrepreneur. I've started my own website. I've got products. I've got programs. I've got all kinds of things going on. And that stuff would have been a lot harder to pump out. I know it can be done because there's heaps of mumpreneurs out there, but I also feel like I've been able to give it 100% rather than having to measure out my time. I also go surfing at the drop of a hat. Like if I wake up and I don't have clients that day, and if the sun's shining and the wind's not blowing, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go for a surf right now. And then I paddle out, and while I'm sitting out there, I make sure I say to myself, couldn't have done this if I had tiny little toddlers. So I just make sure I look at the positives and the upside, and I make sure that I include activities into my life that couldn't be done if I had a couple of or that would have been very difficult to do if I had a couple of kids in tow.
And so how would you say you focus your creative energy? Because obviously having a child is just one way of doing that, but I know that obviously you can employ that within your business as well, but what are some of the ways you feel that you express yourself and use that femininity?
I think in my business, I try and be a very nurturing force.
Yes. Yeah.
And I make sure that I have that sort of empathetic, nurturing side of me switched on when I'm looking after clients, or even in the program that I do, that like there's a Facebook group attached to it. I make sure I go in there and, make sure that I give those ladies in the group my support and my attention. And like I said, again, making sure I focus on the things that I can do, because I don't have any little people taking my attention away. So I never have to decide between looking after someone in my own house and looking after my clients. I can give them 100%. Sorry, husband, if you're listening, I do love you. Um, he can look after himself. He's a big boy. But it makes that balance a lot easier. And I also, I like to think that the friends that I'm really close to as well also get a fair measure of my energy. And again, I think that that's a lot easier to do if, again, you don't have to decide between who you're going to give your energy to that day. And so I like to think that I can be, a friend that can go and do things at the drop of a hat. If a friend's upset
Yes.
or having a shit day, I can say, hey, you want to go have a juice right now or a coffee right now, and I'll drive over to your house right now if you want me to. And, and again, as long as because I have allocated client days, and then I have client free days that are more for writing and
Yeah.
blogging and recipe development and stuff. So, if someone needs me on a client free day, I like to think that I can drop everything and
And
go
be
and do that
flexible,
thing.
really. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love how Liz Gilbert in Eat, Pray, Love talks about that whole spare aunties thing.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, I like to think that I could be that person when required. Like, she says that there's women in the world who are more destined to be the spare aunties than be a mother, because when all the mums are busy, there has to be a spare auntie around who can step in and make food, or go and support someone, or lend a hand somewhere. Because if you've got your own kids and someone else needs you, then again, you're stretched, aren't you? So you need a spare auntie who doesn't have kids to step in and take the reins for a little bit.
So true. And I mean, with the statistics that we've got now, I mean, nearly a quarter, or well, actually, no, it's nearly a third of Aussie couples don't have kids. Worldwide, women aged 40 and over, nearly a quarter of those are women without children, which is, those figures have like doubled in the last 10 years. So this demographic of women is growing rapidly and is only going to increase further. So it's going to be really interesting to see how our cultural and societal views of this demographic changes over time, and hopefully will be much more balanced perspective around it all, I hope.
It's funny that you mention those statistics, hey, because it's not like it doesn't reflect in the things that have been said to me over the past decade, and the pressures
Mm,
that have been accidentally put on me. Like, we talked about the pressures that like the family put on you that are direct, like, hey,
yes.
are you having kids because I want you to? But there's also those sort of indirect pressures that people do. Like, I had a very, very, very close friend, like very close friend, back in Melbourne, say, oh, but you'll never know the love that you can
Oh,
have and that you will
yes.
experience. And I'm like, what? You
Yeah.
just told me that, like, this, this part of my life is, I've got this big chunk, this big gaping hole that apparently I'm going to have where my heart used to be, and that is always going to be there. That's always going to be like this void that could have been filled with all this love. And
It's one of those
you're
motherhood
supposed to be one of
myths.
my best mates.
Yeah, totally. And really, like, I find that kind of comment, like, well, you don't know what real love is unless you've had a child. It's like, well, maybe you didn't know what real love was before. But again, we all relate in a different way, and every relationship we've got is different. We experience love. It's immeasurable. It's not quantifiable. You can't say one person's experience with their partner is not as important or valid as somebody else's bond with their child. Because as we know, there are a lot of children in the world who are not loved by their parents and who need a lot
Yeah.
of support. So, I find those sorts of comments are just so unhelpful and really damaging.
And And I actually said to that friend in that conversation that, look, I've got some issues with my health. I get tired really, really easily. I've got some issues, going on that need addressing in terms of, mental health and whatever. And I don't think I'm in a good place to have babies right now. I don't think this is going to be good for me. And I said, I don't think I'm strong enough right now. And then she came back with, you'll never know how strong you can be until you have them. Don't worry, you'll be fine. And I'm like, I just told you I'm near having meltdown and you're telling me to push on through and have the babies anyway? Like,
Yeah,
okay.
not very responsible, is it? You're trying to make a really conscious choice from a place of like self-responsibility, and also knowing that if you can't put 100% into focusing on that totally, then you don't want to do it.
Yeah, and especially given the history where I come from and the fact that the people who brought me up, my parents, like, I'm not really stoked about the job that they did. I don't want to give any less than 100% to a little person if that little person was in my life. That's just how I feel because of what's happened to me. So if I can't be the parent that I want to be, I don't really want to have a crack at it at all.
No, and that's completely right and makes absolute sense. There's no way that you couldn't be influenced by your childhood experiences. I mean, we all are, aren't we? We're all a product of that. I mean, I'm not saying it's the biggest influence, but it is an influence. And of course, when we're very consciously working with that, we can make different choices and decisions, which is what you're doing.
Yeah. And, whenever I think about that comment, because it stayed with me, that comment, it's like it's been with me for, a decade now and almost. And whenever I think about that, you'll never know the love thing, I just also think to myself, and you'll never know the feeling of waking up at 7 a.m. on a Wednesday, making a snap decision to go for a surf, getting down there, having the sun come up and paddling out over crystal clear water spontaneously, because I made the decision to do it half an hour ago, and having that amazing, beautiful, almost religious experience of being in the ocean with no responsibility, with no one to answer to, with no schedule, with no nothing, just me and the ocean sitting out there, and it's all mine. It's
so
all mine.
True.
You'll
So
never know
true.
that. So, hey, I'll have my love thing and you can have your love thing. And I think I'm doing a pretty good job of filling that big gaping void that apparently I have.
It's so true. And I mean, really, what you're doing is highlighting that every woman's life and path is unique to her, and what works for one person is not right for the next woman. And so it's really respecting that everybody has got a different journey to make, and we can't know what's right for somebody else, can we?
No. And you know what? You've got to play the cards that you've been dealt in the best way that you can without trying to make them look like someone else's cards.
Yeah. Yeah, so true. And really, I mean, you've just touched on it there. So obviously that freedom and that ability to be spontaneous is a huge benefit of not having little ones to look after. So how else would you say that you experience the benefits of not having young children?
Look, I think my husband would say that he gets a lot more of my attention than some other husbands get.
Yeah, true.
He doesn't get neglected. Like I said, sometimes he might get pushed aside a little bit because of my business and my clients, but he's definitely next in line, him and the dogs. Maybe not always in that order, but yeah, he gets a lot of my attention and a lot of my time, and we do a lot of things together. And I have other things that I can focus on, and I think it's just really important to be happy with the things that you're doing, rather than the things that you don't have and that you can't do. And, we don't even know whether I didn't get pregnant because of a medical reason. Like I've definitely got a medical reason, but we don't know if that's the exact thing that that was the cause of me not getting pregnant. It might just be that we didn't spend enough time trying.
Or maybe it
or that we
just wasn't
didn't
the
tweak
right thing
something.
for you. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, if an accident happened, and we've already discussed this, like I'm 40, accidents can happen, and and we would call it a happy accident, keep the baby and get on with it, and go, okay, well, here's a new phase of my life that we're going to explore, but it's definitely not in the current plan. Where and I have been saying to people, and myself and my husband and I discussed that in 5 years from now, if I still haven't, then we will downsize and move to a smaller house, because this 3-bedroom thing is ridiculous if you don't have it full of children. And we'll have a smaller house, and it'll be cozy, and we'll make it beautiful, and we'll find other things to fill up our lives. Like, I'm going to book an overseas holiday every year and go and do something that would be harder to do if you had small children. And again, while I'm on that holiday doing that thing, I'll say to myself, hey, couldn't necessarily do this with kids. And if a little baby did come into our lives, so be it. But I think in 5 years' time, we'll be sitting here and I still won't have one.
But like you say, so true, because we don't know what's coming next, do we? We can only be sure of how we feel and what we're doing right now. So who knows what's down the road?
Yeah, and we're not going to try for one out of fear that we might wake up 10 years down the track in a whole world of regret and wished we'd done this. Like, I definitely, they talk about whether you're making your decisions from a place of love or a place of fear. And I refuse to make a decision from a place of fear, just in case, that will I die old and alone? Well, that's all right. I'm going to pump my business, and hopefully I'll die with staff around, because I'll have lots of money.
Exactly. One lady who I spoke to on the podcast a while ago, she said that her and her friends are going to get together and have a beautiful house, and they're going to hire Spanish nurses, Spanish male nurses, that is. And so I thought, oh, there you go. There's an alternative.
That'll do. And that fear of, what am I going to do with my family heirlooms? And we're not talking about the ones on my side, because I've got very few. Like I said, I left home in a hurry. I have not much. But there's family heirlooms on my husband's side. Like, who do we give those to? Do they end up in the trash? Like, how will I be remembered? How will he be remembered? Like, what happens when that family name dies out? Like, all that's all ego. So hopefully I've got a couple of decades, or maybe even 4 or 5 decades to work through that, I would hope, before it comes to crunch time and I'm living with that sort of regret. But hopefully that won't be, that's not a good reason to have a baby, is it?
No, it's just not.
Carry on the family.
It's just not, really.
Tradition. So, it might be a good idea for some people, honestly. Like, if you have a strong family connection and you have strong family traditions or a strong family culture, it probably would be a reason. It would definitely be on the pros side of the pros and cons list. But it's not a good reason for me, because I don't come from a strong family tradition and I have very few family members. And so it's not a selling point for me. But so I definitely, at some point down the track, I might be sitting there with some family heirlooms going, well, one day you're going to end up at the op shop, but that's okay. That's okay, because, I've studied some Buddhism in the past, and they talk about impermanence, and this is a perfect way to learn about impermanence.
It really is. It is. And the thing is, once you're gone and you've made that transition, are you going to care about some old antique chairs? I don't think so.
or some diamond ring, or family, bit of jewellery, or we've got a wonderful trophy here that belonged to, he's still alive, but it belongs to my father-in-law, but we have it now, from like a big swim, one of those pier to pub swims or something that he won. We've got that. It's like, where's that going to go? But that, if you take a little bit of a zoom out moment and zoom out and look at that and go, why am I worried about that stuff? Yeah. Like, am I going to be worried about that stuff when I'm on my deathbed? Like, I've read The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying by Bronnie Ware.
Which is a great book, isn't it?
It's one of the best, one of the best. And so, sometimes I just try and take a little zoom out and go, is that going to be one of my regrets? And, what can I do to work through this while I'm still alive? And again, am I making decision based from a place of fear? Okay, well, let's work out what's really going on.
Exactly. Very wise indeed. And so thank you so much for your thoughts today. It's been so great to talk to you. And
Yay, it's been fun.
Can you share with us, Jules, the best place for people to find you online?
Yeah, thank you. I have two websites, but the main one is julesgalloway.com. That's where I hang out the most. And there's loads of naturopathic help and health tips and recipes and all kinds of good stuff there. And the other place I hang out is on shinyhealthyyou.com. That's my 12-week program. And I've also got a podcast called Shiny Healthy You. So if you do a little search in iTunes for Shiny Healthy You, it should pop up there.
Brilliant. Oh, well, thank you. And thanks so much. So great to hear from you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Unclassified Woman. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. For information on events and services, connect with Michelle at michellemariemcgrath.com.